Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Meha Bharadwaj Alter, and today we begin with a special person. We begin with MS Dhoni. That's right. We all have a favorite MS Dhoni moment. He is the birthday boy today, so it's only fair that we begin with MS Dhoni on today's show. So we all, like I said, have a favorite MS Dhoni moment. From the image of a young captain atop an open-top bus as the whole of India celebrated their maiden T20 World Cup title to his 6 in 2011 World Cup final that took India to victory. MS Dhoni has been part of our lives at various moments, and the cricket fans just can't seem to get enough of him. More so because while the world lives on social media, MSD has prioritized real life over reels. Since leading CSK to a record equaling title in the IPL, there have been very few photos or videos of him, and he likes to keep it that way. So even as we wonder what he's up to on his 42nd birthday, we wish a very happy birthday and to MS Dhoni and take a moment to just admire and appreciate the legend of MS Dhoni. India's Captain Cool will always be remembered as the man, who's done so much for Indian cricket. He took the country to a World T20 title in 2007, a World Cup title in 2011, and lifted the Champions Trophy in 2013. He is the first and only captain to have achieved that trifecta in the game so far, and that is a record that could also stand for generations to come. So while we know he's a modern great, we ask the question, is he the greatest ever white ball captain? Jamie Alter, he's here. He joins us on the show. Vedam Jaishankar is here as well. Gentlemen, is this going to be straightforward or will there be a heated debate? Jamie,
Whichever
Vedam?
way you want it. Whichever way you want it.
Okay, let's then, before I get to our guests, let's talk about Mahendra Singh Dhoni just a little bit more. Now, captaincy in cricket is anything but straightforward. The captain handles the toss, his playing 11, bowling sequence, batting order, field positions, tactical calls on opposition, and that's just on the field. He has to handle the players off the field as well, and also handle the media, cop criticism for when his strategy does not work. So not only does he need to understand the game, he needs to be intuitive and innovative, and he needs to be calm under pressure. With that in mind, let's evaluate some of the best captains in cricket and see if MSD is the greatest out of all of them. Some numbers before we start that conversation. MSD has an overall win percentage of 53.61 across formats, winning 178 matches of the 332 that he played or he captained India in. Now, he guided the Indian cricket team to its most successful phase between 2007 and 2018, where he captained his side to 3 ICC trophies, namely T20 World Cup 2007, World Cup 2011, Champions Trophy 2013. Also, under his leadership in 2009, Team India attained the best test cricket ranking of number 1 for the first time in their history. Now, talking about the IPL, under Dhoni's captaincy, CSK reached the IPL playoffs 14 times while appearing in the final 10 times. If you look at the overall numbers across formats, MS Dhoni has the second best win percentage after Ricky Ponting. Ricky Ponting's percentage is 67.9, having won 220 games out of 324. MSD is in the second position with 178 wins in 332 matches. There, take a look at that. Ricky Ponting has just lost 77 matches in his career, having played 300 plus. MS Dhoni 332, won 178, lost 120. Then there is Graeme Smith. He is in the third position, having 163. Alan Border is in the fourth position, and after that, it is Virat Kohli. So Alan Border, 271 matches as captain, has won 139 and lost 89. And then in the fifth position overall is Virat Kohli, 213 matches. He's won 135, have lost. Virat Kohli has lost 60 matches. Okay, but captaincy is more than just numbers. So let's get straight to our guests on the show. Let me begin with Jamie. Then Jamie, this is going to be an interesting debate because this is not just about numbers. Captaincy is so much more. And if you take tests out of it, though, I do believe that that MS Dhoni is right up there when it comes to all the great captains. So with that, I'm going to ask you: is he the greatest in white ball cricket?
Good evening. Again, it depends how you interpret that word "greatest," right? It can be rather subjective. But look, let's just dwell a bit on those numbers. He's the first captain, Meha, to have under his captaincy to have the T20 World Cup, One Day World Cup, and Champions Trophy. Right now, this is far from English cricket's or European cricket's treble, but it is outstanding that that at one time he had been the first captain and definitely the only Indian to have these three titles under his name. He also took India to #1. Not as long as Virat Kohli was able to hold the team there, and even that's a story for a different day. But from a record, from a stats perspective view, that MS Dhoni was able to do that while also being the best finisher of his era in one-day cricket, a very, very handy T20I batsman, a decent test player, but more than all these things, the way that even now at the age of he's going to be 42, 43, he's still second to none when it comes to keeping to spinners, as Shubman Gill will attest, and also to standing up to medium pacers behind the stumps, right? I'm not going to dwell too much on his success in the IPL. I still believe yes, it requires skill, but that's a corporate league. Let's just see what the man has done in international cricket. Also, like all famous or great captains, again, the great word is subjective here. When did he take charge? He took charge at a time when there was transition. He actually, one of the stranger things, and you and I were there in Sri Lanka, was he chose to skip that Sri Lanka tour when he knew that he was going to be unveiled as the next test captain. Beyond that, and also his last couple of years as a test captain were very, very poor. He oversaw consecutive defeats in England and Australia. Barring those, what he contributed to selecting players from smaller regions, for backing players, for some outstanding tactical decisions. Yes, we have to admit, luck also played a big factor in the legend of MS Dhoni becoming what it is. But to my mind, he is definitely the greatest, if you see greatest as results, team results, as well as individual results.
Okay, what about you, Vedam? Do you agree with Jamie? And also, I'm just saying, T20s, I would think a lot of people would think that he is the greatest, right? With not just with the results, the way he took India to that maiden World Cup triumph in 2007 in South Africa, then what he's done in the IPL, and the way he brings out the best in players. A lot of times he's not given the best team, didn't have the greatest bowling attack, but still won matches. So when you look at all of that, his numbers, the way he's captained India in T20s, you think, yes, he's right up there. He is the best. But when it comes to ODIs, would you agree that he is the greatest, given that there are others that he's competing with who've done extremely well, be it Steve Waugh, there's Ricky Ponting, even you look at Clive Lloyd, there are so many others. So how do you see his performance as a captain in ODIs?
Hi, Neha. Hi, Meha. Basically, what happens in a sport like cricket is captain is only as good as his team is. Gordon Greenidge made that famous statement when he's speaking about the captaincy of the West Indies. When asked if Clive Lloyd was a great captain, he said even a donkey could have been the captain of West Indies, and we would have still won. He said, that's exactly what he thought of captaincy. But I beg to differ on one particular point, because Dhoni's impact as a captain of the Indian cricket team has been phenomenal. Because if we cast our mind back, during the Greg Chappell era, Chappell had a problem, handling the Indian way of doing things. maybe in Australia, that would have been open and spoken. Everybody would have spoken, because I've seen it myself in one of those tours when Alan Border was the captain of the Australian A team. They actually had a meeting in a bar. I was at the bar. They had a team meeting at the bar in the evening when everybody, wanted to talk and say whatever they wanted to say, of course, in a more disciplined way. And later, when Border spoke, there was pin drop silence, and then somebody disagreed with him, somebody agreed with him, and then they all sat down to have a drink. In India, that would never happen. And Greg Chappell had that issue because the juniors were not talking in the presence of the seniors. And that is when he started having separate meetings with Dhoni, because Dhoni was a guy who could talk. And he would talk, he would say what is wrong and what's right and things like that. So Chappell actually liked that. And of course, he was accused of having groupism because he was having 2 or 3 different types of meetings, some with the seniors and some with the juniors. But be that as it may, what we really understood is Dhoni quickly grasped from Chappell that the West Indies became a great team. They were a good team, they became a great team because of fitness. And he immediately realized that the Indian team to win actually had to get fit. And if you remember during that phase when he became the captain, he got rid of many of the senior players, whether it was Virender Sehwag or Rahul Dravid or VVS Lakshman. He just phased them out. Virtually all of them were phased out, except for maybe Tendulkar. And that made a great impact, because the guy who took over from him later, Kohli, took it a step forward, took it to another level altogether. But what they succeeded between the two of them was getting a very, very fit Indian team out there, And because they were physically fit, they were also mentally fit. And there were so many other things which went with it. And that is what changed the face of Indian cricket. And I would like to believe that Dhoni was the only person who had the heft and who could convince the selectors that we need to move beyond the legends. The 3-4 legends that I mentioned, they were actually asked to leave. And I don't think any of them really left very politely. There was a little bit of angst, both with VVS Lakshman and with Sehwag. But I think Dravid understood it and took it much better, because he understood the whole game much quicker than the others. But I think there was a lot of resistance initially from a couple of others. But Dhoni had that in him, to convince the selectors, convince the team that this is the way forward. What we've been doing so far has not taken us very far. So let's do something different, and maybe that's the answer. So for me, Dhoni's greatest contribution was that we can call him Captain Cool, Captain this, Captain that. All that would be true. But to change the trajectory of the Indian team, move from sort of very talented youngsters, very, very talented cricketers, I beg your pardon, but not as fit as they would like to be, to take them to a different plane. That's what he did. And of course, the Kohli took it to the whole hog. But I really like to think that he was the catalyst right there at that point of time. And for that, I think he really needs to be, praised, and some benefit had to be given to him as perhaps being the most remarkable and game-changing captain of the Indian team.
Okay, so we are celebrating Mahendra Singh Dhoni here on the show. It is his birthday. What do you think of what we are asking? Is he the greatest white ball captain ever to have played this game in the modern era? Do let us know in the comment section below. You can send messages for Mahendra Singh Dhoni, birthday wishes, and you can comment in that comment section below with all of that. But Jamie, I think with Indian captaincy, so much of this comes down to pressure and handling pressure. And I think that's why he stands out in the way he led this team, because at no point did you feel like there was any kind of rift within the team while MS Dhoni was there. There was never any conversation around that. And I just feel like because of that calmness that he brought to the team, that was one of the major reasons why this team did so well under MSD.
Absolutely, and you need that kind of a leader who does not let external pressures or even internal pressures spill onto the field, right? Most of Dhoni's decisions during the prime of his career ended up working like a charm, which is why that reputation was built, You just go back to 2007 and the team which was chosen by the Dilip Vengsarkar led selection committee. It was a good mix, but at that time, what was Dhoni's contribution in picking players? We're not too sure, but look what he did with that team. Of course, the final, getting Joginder Sharma to bowl that over. The stuff of legend, folklore. Taking off his shirt, showing emotion finally. But you go back to that first match, the match against Pakistan in the league stage, right? When there was a bowl out, right? And compare what Dhoni did to what Pakistan captain did, right? Dhoni took pace off the ball. Who bowled those? Who bowled those balls? Harbhajan, Sehwag, and Robin Uttapa. What did Shahid Afridi? Was it Shahid Afridi the captain? Whoever the Pakistan captain was, he went for pacers, right? So it's small things like that. You all sat up, and keep in mind, 2007 T20s was a very foreign concept to the Indian audience, right? And this is India Pakistan like we'd never seen it. A bowl out? What the heck is a bowl out? But watching Dhoni say, you know what? There's one stump. We've never faced this in our time. It's happened just once before in international T20s. Three bowlers have to run in after a tie. And a tie against India, Pakistan will take the life out of the best of players. They somehow dodge defeat. What does he do? Let's take pace off. Up comes Sehwag, tongue. Up comes Harbhajan, tongue. Up comes Uttapa, tongue. Hat off, bow. This was the starting point, as far as I'm concerned, of where Dhoni's iconic captaincy started, right? Forget what the world is saying. Forget what the media is saying. We have a job to do. And the same thing, backing Rohit Sharma in that very same 2007 World Cup, bringing RP Singh in, So it's just this whole ability to stay calm, like you said. Even the worst of times, team is being walloped in overseas test matches. He never let it show, Whatever it was, I'm sure, and I've heard from many, many players off the record, he was very fierce. He could lose his cool. He would raise his voice, and he would let you know when you had messed up. But that was in the dressing room, never in public, never admonish everyone. And as we saw in this IPL, Moeen Ali will know. One look is enough to, send the guy straight back to the boundary and give his best. So again, it's just a fantastic character study of a once-in-a-generation player who just was not the most talented, but boy, he worked his rear end off and he carved a unique, perhaps unparalleled name for himself in Indian cricket.
Two things now, Vedam. When you compare him to some of the other captains, I said Ricky Ponting. I am also going to name Arjuna Ranatunga. I'm also going to name Imran Khan, and I'm going to name Kapil Dev in that list. And why I'm saying this is the kind of impact, this different type of impact that these captains have had on the team. Ricky Ponting led from the front, also was leading a team that was a very good team, right? So, 2 World Cups that Australia won under him was also because of the kind of team that he had and also the way that he was batting. But you look at Kapil Dev and what he did in '83, you look at Imran Khan, what he did with Pakistan as they won the World Cup, or Arjuna Ranatunga for Sri Lanka. They impacted the team and they led the team to a title where not many would have given them a chance. And that's how they increased the popularity of the sport in their country. And so I'm just talking about that impact that our captains had. Keeping that in mind, would you still place MS Dhoni above the others?
I suppose so, but among the names that you mentioned, look what happened to Imran Khan. The day after they won the World Cup, nobody in the team wanted to talk to him.
Sure.
He had a dinner, I think it was for his for the cancer hospital that he was building. He had a fundraising dinner. Not a single Pakistani player turned up. They just stayed away. And in fact, he collected more money in India than he collected in Pakistan. So I think in different ways, these people have impacted differently. And let's not forget that Ponting actually had an issue. He used to get drunk and get into bar brawls. When the Australian cricket team, they mentored him. They told him that he is the future captain and they're grooming him as a captain. They expect him to be a captain, but he needs to clean up his act. And he did that brilliantly. And he led a brilliant team. More than anything else, the team that he had was a brilliant team. But he was abrasive. And that abrasiveness that he had, it actually gelled very well with the rest of the team. Because the whole team was that way. They could understand that language, they knew that language, and they also, reacted to that kind of language. But with Dhoni, it was different. Dhoni, in many ways, is totally different. First, he came from a small town. It was a small, usually you used to captain from a big city, from a Bombay or a Karnataka or a Hyderabad or one of the big cities, or Calcutta. But here, there's a guy coming from Ranchi, which actually is the cricketing boondocks. But he had won the respect of all the players, and everybody knew that he could play and he could do things his own way. He was an unorthodox keeper, he was an unorthodox batsman. He did a lot of things unorthodox, but at the end of the day, it was results that counted. Initial days of Dhoni, I thought he was a big gambler. The way, like Jamie pointed out, he threw the ball to Sharma to bowl. That was a gambler's instinct. But at the same time, when you look back and think, you're actually lowering the guard of the batsman when you do something like that. So there is some logic in what he is doing. And Uttapa, he had said that how they are practicing for a bowl out. And when you look at it, actually the bowlers feel more pressure if they are supposed to hit the stumps and bowl out. And here there were non-regular bowlers virtually who just had to come across and bowl. So I think in many ways there was a logic in what Dhoni was doing. The logic might not have been very apparent at that point of time, but over a period of time, you understood that he was actually 2 steps ahead of everybody else. He understood the situation better, he played it out better, and if a captain has so much of confidence in an Uttapa bowling or a Joginder Sharma bowling, the guy would like to live up to that confidence. He would give 200%. So my captain, crucial over, he is depending on me. Let's do it. And there are no nerves because you don't expect it. Suddenly it's thrown to you, and then there are no nerves that you do a brilliant job. Otherwise, the previous over, Joginder would have been planning what to do, where should I bowl, how should I pitch the ball. Nothing. He just threw the ball to him and he delivered. So I think in many ways there was logic to what Dhoni was doing, though many of us actually thought he was gambling. And in somebody like Kapil Dev could win a match with the bat or ball on his own. He didn't really need others to do it. And he showed time and again how he could do it. Of course, you need support in cricket. Cricket is a team game. But he had the ability. But Dhoni was not like that. He could get others, to perform much better. For a long time, it was thought that the tussle was between him and Yuvraj Singh, and Yuvraj should have been the captain rather than Dhoni. But Dhoni not only became the captain, whatever hesitancy Yuvraj had, he won him over and he delivered. Chris Broad, for instance, was hit for 6 sixes in an over, not because of Dhoni, because Yuvraj had that brilliance in him. But the point is, when the chips were down, he contributed. And Dhoni got somebody like Gautam Gambhir. Gautam Gambhir is a difficult person to control, difficult person to handle. But that's the captaincy. You get diverse characters, you get diverse mindsets, you get diverse mentalities, but get them all to work together towards a common cause. That's what Dhoni did. That's why I place Dhoni much higher than even, Imran was like a feudal lord, lording it over some absolute, I won't say villagers, but I can't get another better word for it. But, a whole lot of illiterate lot, he was a leader of them. And, they just looked up to him as if he was a Maharaja, and he delivered. It was easier to lead the Pakistan team being an Imran. But being a Dhoni, this was right the opposite. Sure. He comes from a small town. He's, handling people from big cities, and he's doing a brilliant job. So I think in many ways, Dhoni, I think, is a far better captain, or was a far better captain than any of those that you mentioned.
Jamie, the legend of Dhoni only grew more and more with the way he adapted to T20 cricket. Isn't that so? I mean, just to see him play T20s, T20Is, IPL, and people keep saying that you're as good as your team. A captain is as good as his team. But in his case, what he's done is that he's taken a team which doesn't have its first choice players like he did this time around. There were injury concerns. There's an Ajinkya Rahane who was completely changed because of the kind of freedom that Mahendra Singh Dhoni gave him in the season of the IPL. That now Ajinkya Rahane finds himself back in the test squad as well. Of course, his domestic cricket, his domestic performance was also good for Mumbai. But what I'm trying to say is that he sort of brought the best out of players, which was again a standout feature of his captaincy.
Absolutely, Mia, and not just at the IPL level or at the international level with India. I've said this before. Josh Hazelwood and Sam Curran have a lot. They owe a lot to MS Dhoni. Josh Hazelwood had good T20I numbers for Australia, but he was never seen as a natural fit by a majority of Australian fans and experts. He goes and plays for Chennai Super Kings, and then in that IPL, which was split between India and the UAE, and his role in leading CSK to that title in 21 went a long way in giving him the confidence, and the Australian selectors, George Bailey and his gang, in saying, you know what, you're going to play every single match of the T20 World Cup, which was held, less than a month later after the IPL, a few weeks, in fact, in the same UAE. And what does Josh Hazelwood do there? He goes and bowls Australia, a rather unfancied Australian team, to the T20 World Cup. Okay. Sam Curran spent a season with CSK. The next year, he was, with injuries and loss of form, he was doing commentary for Sky. And he referenced on one of his Sky Sports stints that I learned a lot just being around MS Dhoni. When he comes back to prime fitness, what does Sam Curran do? Player of the tournament in England's T20 World Cup win last year, and then player of the final. There is not a single player of any country, any skill level, of any background who shared a dressing room with Dhoni at CSK down the years and has not emerged a better cricketer. And that is the hallmark of what MS Dhoni does. You mentioned it, Vedam mentioned, to get the best out of players who perhaps are not the best in that squad. Along with that, just the ability to say, you know what? And maybe it is like Vedam said, that gambler's instinct. Maybe it gets a lot of credit in how he thought. But the bottom line is players became better. Players who had perhaps turned a corner for the worse, they came back much better. Some players became fitter. Absolutely, I'm on the same page here when we say that Dhoni was the one which pushed India to become a fitter team. Virat Kohli raised the bar some notches, but it was because of MS Dhoni. So all around, whatever his contribution be, through stats, through inputs, through captaincy, no one like him in the history of, forget Indian cricket, of global cricket.
The low point in captaincy, though, I think I can only look back and think of India's record under him in away matches, test matches I'm talking about, Vedam. Very clearly, that was the phase where, despite India getting to that #1 position in tests, India's away record under MS Dhoni was abysmal. So I think that probably is the only low point in his captaincy.
Yeah, you could say that, but actually, Test match exposes a lot of your chinks, and it's not so much like the T20 cricket. And let's not forget that we had this lousy habit for a long time of playing with just 4 bowlers, And I think Virat Kohli was the one who changed that to 5 bowlers. But with 4 bowlers, it's very difficult to win anything, either home or away. And sometimes, you wonder whether Dhoni has made the right call. I think in one of the series, I think it was against England in England, he brought back RP Singh. And I don't know where RP Singh was, but when we saw him on television, I saw him on television. I mean, he looked so totally out of shape, and even when he was bowling, he looked so out of shape. So you wonder sometimes whether these kind of sudden, maybe Dhoni himself hadn't seen him, I just called him, and you wonder sometimes whether these kind of sudden moves and changes actually, when you talk about logic, whether there's any logic at all. Do you expect an RP Singh who's totally out of shape to come and perform miracles here? I mean, amazing. The minute he had landed in England, he should have been sent back and said, get into shape before you get into this team. But that didn't happen. So I think we made a lot of mistakes that way. But let's also not forget that we missed out so many of these great players at that time. Tendulkar was there, but then, you had batsmen of the caliber of Rahul Dravid, Virendra Sehwag, Lakshman. I mean, they were all sent off. Who were their replacements? They were replacements were fit, but cricket-wise, they still had some way to go. So I think you can't really blame the captain for all these things that happened. But I suppose it's easier to hide some of these inefficiencies or deficiencies, if you'd like it, in T20 cricket or white ball or the ODI cricket, rather than Test cricket, where you stand exposed. It's like the Ashes series now. England is standing exposed because these inadequacies will just get magnified in a test match. And that's what it happened. We didn't have a great team. It's as good as that. We were moving towards a great team. We just had one Virat Kohli, if I remember right at that time, who was head and shoulders above the others. But otherwise, I think the batting was a problem. And because the batting was a problem, you tried to hide it with more batsmen and weakened your bowling. And that became a big mess.
Jamie, you wanted to comment quickly before I move on?
Just laughing when Vedam mentioned that whole RP Singh incident. RP Singh was in Miami and was in no state. There's a lovely story behind that, but I think that's for a different discussion when we on air. But I know you haven't asked me, and I just think, at least I find it fair to, yes, we can praise Dhoni, but there were certain instances, and I think Vedam has touched upon them. But there were times when he wondered with Dhoni, was that necessary? And I'll give you very, very briefly the 2016 T20 World Cup. India were favorites. They dominated the tournament. Then they ran up against Lendl Simmons at the Wankhede Stadium, and I think Virat Kohli was the form batsman of that year across formats. He was a top scorer. He scored another 86, 88 not out to get India to a decent total. India lost that match, and during the press conference, MS Dhoni walked in, and I was there in the fourth row. He had a different look about him. And as soon as that whole tirade of questions and accusations from, let's face it, the Indian media started it, in his second or third answer, he brought up an Australian journalist who writes for cricket.com.au, and he had him sit down. And this was in the social media era. It wasn't as big. This made television headlines. It made newspaper headlines. But it left, at least in my mind, and a lot of senior journalists there, it left a sour taste, because this was uncalled for. It was sort of putting a foreign journalist on the spot. And while many people laughed, oh, that's just Dhoni being cool, it actually sent a wrong message. And I'm not alone in saying this, because I've had this discussion with many, many senior journalists who've covered cricket for longer than I've even been in this line. And they said, that was Dhoni hijacking because of his power. He was using his power in a wrong way. He had the option to either answer, or he had the option to say, you guys don't have a clue what I've just gone through. But the way he brought poor Lewis Cameron up on stage and asked him where you're from, would this be asked you in Australia, it didn't go down very, very well. And it also came at a time when he was also trying to crack as a player, So there are times, yes, he's outstanding, praise him. But there were times, and also that time when he took the whole team came to a press conference. There were times when he wondered, a man of your stature doesn't need to have such sour grapes. I just wanted to add that just to show that he is human at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. And I agree. But I think when you look at some of the other captains and their tenure, there have been worse things in terms of, how they've handled the media, how there have been captains, media have actually not been even allowed to ask tough questions to those captains after they've lost. Sometimes those captains haven't come after the team has lost. They've sent somebody else, be it the coach or another junior player. But let's move on then to the Ashes. Headingley, day 2, and England are trailing by 66 runs. But we are going to talk about the first day's play, because that was not without incident, as a section of the touring Australian fans accused England captain Ben Stokes of cheating. This happened during the second session of play, when replays showed that Stokes' arm had clearly touched the boundary rope while he dived to prevent the ball from crossing it. But oddly, got away with it and then did not acknowledge the boundary, even as the third umpire did not rule it a 4. Even English commentators could see that it was a boundary. That looks like a 4 to me. That's exactly what former England captain Nasser Hussain said. He was shocked that it was not given a 4. The third umpire, Joel Wilson, he looked over the replays and ultimately decided Stokes had saved the boundary and only 2 runs were awarded. And like I said, Nasser Hussain was shocked. He could not believe his eyes that was not given a 4. This left the Aussie fans infuriated, and they immediately showed their displeasure, particularly since it was the England team that had claimed Australia's skipper Pat Cummins that he should have withdrawn his appeal when Johnny Bairstow was stumped at Lord's. So when the shoe is on the other foot, Vedam, when the shoe is on the other foot, in his own words, it's very different. you don't think of spirit of cricket. And that clearly was a boundary. I don't know if you saw it, but he had touched the rope.
Yeah, but put yourself in his position. Everything is happening so fast. He's running so quickly. He's diving. He's pushing it back. He doesn't know at what time when he's made contact. See, the idea is when he makes contact with the rope and there's ball in hand, only then it's a boundary. Does he know? I don't know whether he knows. I would be surprised if he knew when it had happened. That's why there is a third umpire. The third umpire has not done his job. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you have to castigate anybody, then it has to be the third umpire. And I wouldn't really blame Stokes on that at all, because at that speed and when he's doing so many things, running, diving, stopping, pulling it back, looking at the rope, I don't think he knows he's there. But that is the third umpire's job. What's he doing? I wouldn't call this spirit of cricket at all. There is nothing spirit of cricket in this. I think he did his best to stop a boundary. Whether he succeeded or didn't succeed, that's for the umpire to decide. And I think the umpire is at fault in that occasion.
Jamie, do you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. Because look, like Vedam said, he's in motion, right? He's sliding. Sometimes we've heard players say, yes, we know when it's there. But again, I guess we have to give Ben Stokes the benefit of the doubt, because more than any act, when you're sliding and not being aware of your arm on the boundary rope, I think he's also aware of what stance his team has taken against Australia. I mean, look at these visuals. It's clear to a blind man that, he may touch. So I'm on the same page. You have to fault the third umpire here. And again, Meha, why in this age of, 36 cameras and multiple replays are we having this? That he's pushed the boundary back by 2.5 feet. And the umpire cannot see this. So the bigger picture is, and again, I like a stuck record, as I often am, why is cricket the only sport in the history of sport which has had so much tinkering, so much changes, so much technology, and we still cannot get something as clear as this? I know Johnny Bairstow was being daft, but this whole situation is also very daft from an ICC and technology point of view.
Okay, just talking about the match and where it stands at the moment, England trail by 65 runs. Cummins and Stark, they've dominated the morning session. England in shambles. Vedam, we were expecting England to come back in this test match, but at the moment, what we wanted is not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what is going wrong with this England team is they can't play when the pitches are flat, and they can't play if there is juice on the pitches. So I think the Australians have just really outgunned them, whether it comes to batting or bowling, or and the Australians, those three pace attack, in whatever combination they use, they're using their four fast bowlers, just playing three of them, rotating them, and all three of them are really good, and they look, whether it's on a dead track or on a bouncy track or a fresh track, they're really, they're willing to change their plan, their strategies, they're willing to pitch short or pitch up, whatever is required from their captain, and they're doing it brilliantly at high pace. And the fielding also of the Australians has been outstanding. And the Mitchell Marsh innings that he played yesterday, I think that's actually the innings of the series thus far, because they were in trouble. The pitch was doing something, and he just took the match away from them with a brilliant 100. Absolutely brilliant 100. We know in the IPL he's come with a lot of big scores, and he's really hit the ball a long way. But doing this in an Ashes test on a pitch that offers some sort of help against his English attack is really outstanding. And whether Mitch Marsh plays another innings of significance or not, this actually should rank as his finest ever batting effort. And that, I feel, that particular batting effort of his, or this particular batting effort of his, is really going to take the match away from England, whether England like it or not.
Absolutely, and he was playing his first match of the Ashes, his first test in 4 years, smashed a century and nearly a run a ball, and then capped off a terrific day by taking the wicket of Zach Crawley before stumps on day one. The last time Marsh played a test match was in 2019 at the Oval, during which one line that he said went viral, where he said, "Most of Australia hate me." This was in reference to Australia's passionate cricket fans who Marsh believed were frustrated with his inconsistency and failure to hold on to his test spot. Contrast this to Marsh on day one, when while speaking to the reporters, I don't know if you've seen it, but go watch that post-match press conference where he's spoken about, and has actually been quite funny. He was quite funny in that press conference. He half joked that he thinks he is the first man to score a Test 100 on a UK holiday, since he was given a chance, in fact, for this match with regular all-rounder Cameron Green surprisingly rested. This is a much-loved Marsh now, endearing to the Aussie crowd, I'm sure, who since his low in 2019 has helped Australia win the 2021 T20 World Cup and scored good runs in white ball cricket, and who on day one of the Headingley Test rescued Australia from a bad situation. Meanwhile, far away in Bali, Indonesia, Marsh's family posted a video of their celebrating his century on Thursday, in which his father Jeff and brother Sean, both former Test and ODI cricketers, are seen cheering wildly, to which Marsh responded when asked, "I don't think Dad was missing the 40th. That's much more exciting. All my family and all of our close friends are celebrating there with Sean." So whilst they weren't here, the video is bloody great. It's Sean's 40th in a few days, so let's hope he gets to 40. But he deserves all the accolades because of how well he batted yesterday. Look at those visuals. Jamie? Good to see Sean Marsh and Jeff Marsh celebrating like this. But what a moment really for them. I mean, you know, he's been in and out. I know he's one of your favorite players. I remember even before the 2021 World Cup, T20 World Cup, you said he was going to be the most impactful player for Australia, and he certainly was. But really a brilliant innings from him.
Absolutely, Vedam rightly said. I mean, this will be his best Test innings, because this was baseball, you know. Of course, he was dropped on 13 when Joe Root spilled one of the easiest catches he's ever going to get. So you look beyond that, and of course, this is an outstanding innings. But to counter-attack and to pick the bowlers, you know, new bowlers were brought on by Ben Stokes, and first ball, Mitchell Marsh is whipping them over mid-on, and the spinner comes on, and he's hit it in the side screen. This was just a guy who, and I love the fact that he said, you know, let Cameron Green come back. Right, I have no problem. I didn't expect to play a match here. I think it speaks of the mindset of a guy who goes from 4 years ago saying that Australia hates me because I have underperformed. I've not done well. It just says about his mindset. I remember going to Australia to cover the 2015 World Cup, and a lot of journalists said that, half jokingly, of course, there was an unspoken rule in Australian cricket that at any given time, some Marsh had to be part of an Australian team. And this was a time when people were questioning why Sean Marsh was still around and why Mitchell Marsh was being picked. But when you play innings like this, you know, and again, 2021 World Cup, he came into it with outstanding form. Then somehow, very oddly, I remember I was doing commentary and I said, what in the world is Justin Langer doing? Dropping this guy from number 3, where he scored some 500 runs in the last few months, putting him down at 6. And then I think they dropped him for a match. Lo and behold, Meha, as soon as they reinstated Mitchell Marsh at 3, he got 350s in a row, and one of them came in that final. So this is just another outstanding Marsh family product who has at least openly said that, you know, I didn't expect to play here, and what an innings. And he got a wicket as well. So like Vedam said, this is probably the effort or the innings, which it seems, because they're 9 down right now with Stokes batting with Robinson. It's the innings which has shoved England maybe too far from this match.
Okay, now moving on to the news from the World Cup qualifiers. Netherlands have secured their passage to this year's ODI World Cup in India by beating fellow tournament hopefuls Scotland in a thrilling match. The 2 associate member teams were playing to grab hold of the last remaining spot at the World Cup, and led by a fantastic all-round performance from Bas de Leede, the Dutch beat Scotland by 4 wickets to join Sri Lanka as the 2 qualifying teams to make it to the tournament. This will be the first time for the Dutch team at the ODI World Cup since 2011. For Indian fans now, India's matches against teams qualified through the World Cup qualifiers are scheduled on 2nd of November and the 11th of November, with the latter being their last match in the group stage. India's match against Sri Lanka takes place on the 2nd of November at the Wankhede Stadium, which will be a rematch of the iconic 2011 World Cup final, which interestingly also took place at the same venue. Netherlands, meanwhile, meet India at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bengaluru on November 11. There is a good match. There's a good match, Vedam, for you at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bengaluru on 11th of November between Netherlands and India.
I don't know that schedule that you flashed showed that we're playing Sri Lanka in Bangalore. So I don't know.
No.
Maybe true. But that's it, right at the bottom.
Okay.
It looks,
We'll
okay,
get
I don't
that
know.
changed.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because what happened is when this tournament started, the qualifier tournament started, I honestly expected Sri Lanka and West Indies to make it. You know, and if there was a dark horse there, I thought maybe Zimbabwe would be the dark horse. We never expected Netherlands or even Scotland to run. Everybody's so close. I think Scotland also finished on similar 6 points or 8 points or whatever that was, the second place. But I think they lost out on net run rate. But you look at it this way, with Sri Lanka and the Netherlands there, yes, there's going to be a lot of churn out there, because if Netherlands has really moved so much, I think the Dutch players do play, quite a few of them do play in the English county cricket. So that must really be helping them a lot, though I'm not too familiar with many of their players. But I'm sure that the English county cricket experience would do them a world of good. And yeah, it's time that we had more teams coming in. For me, I really sympathize that the West Indies didn't make it, because at one time they were such a great team. And now that they're not even in the World Cup, World Cup champs, I think twice they were. And now they've not even made the qualification for the World Cup. It's a very, very sad state of affairs of West Indies cricket. Maybe they need to do something. This director of cricket affairs, or whatever they call it, which I think one of the Indian cricketers also is trying to thrust down the throat of BCCI. It's really hasn't worked. I think Jimmy Adams has been the director for about 5-6 years, and it's really not taken West Indies cricket anywhere. So the same way, I think Netherlands is doing something very right, that they are now there in the World Cup.
Sure. I'm sorry, I'll have to wrap this up, completely out of time, but thank you so much, Jamie Alter and Vedam Jaishankar. And just as we wrap this up, we are wishing Mahendra Singh Dhoni a very happy birthday. Hope he's had a wonderful day with his family and friends. What do you think of our show? Do let us know in the comments section below, and do subscribe to our channel News 9 Live for all the latest from the world of sports. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.
Pakistan is actually genociding Baloch people. So being Baloch is a crime. If you are a Baloch, it means in the eyes of Pakistan, you don't have any right to live.
The Chinese and Pakistanis are colonizing the Baloch and exploiting their resources.
The Baloch armed struggle will continue unless China withdraws, Pakistan military withdraws from Balochistan, and give Baloch complete authority to decide for themselves.
The Baloch feel that if they don't act now, they will become marginalized.
What lies ahead for Balochistan?
Balochistan, Bangladesh 2.0. This and more. Streaming on India's first OTT video magazine, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Akshay Kumar makes his Marathi film debut in Mahesh Manjrekar's Vedat Marathi Veer Daudale Saath. What's inspired Khiladi Kumar to foray into new terrain? Playing iconic Maratha king Shivaji Maharaj, he's jumping on a bandwagon that spells magic on the box office. Why are filmmakers in a rush to chronicle the life and times of Shivaji Maharaj?
Why do we feel the hunger, the need? Why are we compelled to make a film on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj? And that too so many films. For a simple reason, he was the people's king.
So I think there's this herd mentality in the film industry. One film clicks, then there's a line of producers who announce films with similar storylines.
Personality that has not been adequately explored on the big screen.
I think among filmmakers, the craze